everyone. Welcome back to the Museum Archives. I hope you are doing and feeling well today. We have another fun and interesting topic for you from materials that we have here in the Norman Rockwell Museum Archives. And we thought it might be interesting to focus a little bit on the subject of animals. And I'm guessing that many of you out there have a variety of animals at home, hopefully keeping you company right now. But Rockwell, throughout his life, had many dogs. And as it might not be too surprising, dogs were a major feature in his work. But we have an array of animals to show you today because animals in Rockwell's art often took on the persona of a person and really became part of a composition in a way that helped direct the viewer's attention to exactly what he wanted you to see. And of course, a wonderful example of this is Sodager. This original drawing is actually on view in the Norman Rockwell Museum's galleries, and we hope sometime soon we'll be able to invite people back in to see it. But the painting was done for August 22nd, 1953, cover of the Saturday Evening Post. And it's charming in many ways. We see a young Sodager, and that young man is actually played by the artist's son, Peter, who unfortunately just recently passed away. Peter was a very talented artist in his own right, a sculptor. And we see here that there are young ladies who are interested in the young man. And the other character who's also interested in what's going on, of course, is the dog, who is seated here on a diner stool. We have some wonderful photographs of Rockwell actually holding this beautiful dog very carefully by the leash. And the dog is really cooperating. He is actually seated on a stool. And you can see from this reference photograph in the museum's archives. Let's see, here we have a slightly larger representation, and what you'll notice, of course, is that the dog is on a diner stool, but there is a white board in front of him. And the board was actually used in contrast to the dog's dark silhouette so that Rockwell could see clearly the outline of the animal, which would become very important within his composition. We see here the dog almost seems to be straining his neck to hear the conversation between the two young people. So that's a lot of fun. I'll just show you some photographs of young Peter Rockwell. Rockwell actually tried out a number of young people to pose for this particular work, but he found that ultimately his own son Peter was the best. This is one example of Norman Rockwell using his own dog Pitter as the subject of a Massachusetts Mutual life insurance advertisement. In the 1950s, Rockwell created 81 drawings for MassMutual, and the concept was to portray scenes of American life that would be inspiring and invite people to purchase life insurance. So for example, here, the gist of this ad is that this boy is being protective of the young girl who's possibly meant to be his sister, while Rockwell's own dog, Pitter, looks on. And in this contact sheet, we see Pitter looking on to the children who are actually in Norman Rockwell's studio, and that this gentleman is holding up a treat or trying to get Pitter's attention to ensure that he will be looking up at the children in just the way Rockwell wants. So in this post cover from 1950, we see a determined young man seated in a cozy chair, very busy pattern on the fabric, playing the trumpet. and carefully reading the music that is clipped before him. But of course, if you look down at the lower corner of the picture, we see that there is a dog looking a little bit alarmed at the sounds that are coming out of that trumpet. And he is peeking out from underneath the skirt of the chair. And you'll see that Rockwell actually set that scene up. So here's a wonderful photograph of Rockwell having somehow gotten the dog under the chair and having set up a pose in which the dog is looking up in perfect posture to be used in the composition. Well, we can't leave cats out of this conversation, for sure. And this post cover from July 14th, 1951 actually has 3 of this young boy's feline friends. One under the chair, one on the actual arm of the chair, and one right here up on top. And what's wonderful about the way that Rockwell has arranged them is that the black and white patterns of each of these cats, which we assume to be siblings, really helps to contain the composition and focus our attention on the boy and his father. And this, I'll just mention, was a very difficult painting for Rockwell. In fact, his studio assistant said that he worked on it for about a year. He could not figure out how to get across the idea of a father telling his son about the facts of life. And he changed the setting, first to a bedroom and then back to a living room. And in addition, he had to do something that he tended not to like doing, which was to put words of explanation in a composition. Normally he said that a painting had to tell its story on its own without any help from words. But here we see that the father has balanced on his knee a book called Facts of Life, which I guess was apparently helping him with the talk that he had to give. Rockwell did a series of calendar illustrations for a company called Brown and Bigelow. And one of the series that he did was called 4 Seasons. So Rockwell was generally reflecting upon different times of year. And this beautiful piece focuses on a little boy who is nursing his puppy back to health. Here we see that Rockwell has wrapped a dog in a kind of a scarf and is trying to get the sense that he's tucked away very comfortably in the box, maybe waiting for the medicine that the boy is about to give him. Rockwell talked about the fact that working with animals was quite a challenge. As you can imagine, getting an animal to stay still was not an easy task. So the camera was especially helpful in this regard. And in this photograph, which was also taken for some work that he was doing on a Brown and Bigelow calendar illustration, Rockwell is carefully holding the dog's neck up in just the position he was hoping for. And of course, softening the pose as needed for the beautiful image that was to come later. Domestic animals are one thing, but we have a beautiful series of images that were taken by a photographer who was traveling with Rockwell in Karachi, Pakistan. And this is an image of a drawing that was done as part of Rockwell's round-the-world trip for Pan American Airlines, in which Rockwell traveled to 13 countries in about 3 months. The idea of the ad campaign was to invite Americans to think about international travel and to consider it a possibility. Of course, at the time, in 1955, most people did not travel to far-flung locations by plane. But here Rockwell actually includes himself or someone who looks a little bit like him in the center with another traveler, surrounded by people from Pakistan and the many animals that may have been seen in the streets, such as the ones documented in the photographs that were taken during his trip. So we see animals as diverse as horses and captured among the photos were snake charmers in a variety of poses. Even a gentleman working with a monkey to perform on the streets. And oxen pulling carts. And if you look at the original, the oxen is actually featured fairly prominently. Well, we hope that you've enjoyed this little glimpse into the archives and to Rockwell's work with animals. Next time you notice a Rockwell painting, take a look to see if an animal appears, because oftentimes it will. We thank you again for joining us. We hope you will stay healthy and safe, and we'll look forward to the next installment here in the Norman Rockwell Museum Archives.